It was the kind of crisp late autumn night in Chicago where the air bites just enough to remind you you're alive, but not so hard that you regret stepping out. I call these story nights. For an old man like me, a veteran of 20 years behind the wheel, first a taxi, now this app driving gig, the stories don't come during rush hour. They come between midnight and dawn, when the city sheds its corporate skin and the real, tired, beautiful and sometimes desperate souls step into my back seat. My name is Arthur, 67 years young, though my back might argue the young part. I've seen more life unfold in the rearview mirror than most people see face to face. I'm not just a driver, I'm a temporary vault, a confessional booth on four wheels. They get in, they talk, and they leave, often forgetting the man who steered them through the dark. That's my job. I'm the silent witness. This particular night, the app pinged around 1:30 a.m. A pickup from an address near Lincoln Park, a short ride, maybe 10 minutes, to a downtown apartment building. Simple enough. The profile name was just Ethan. No photo, which always makes me pause for a beat. You learn to read the shadows, the details the app doesn't show you. I pulled up to a beautiful brownstone, the kind with tall, imposing windows that looked like silent eyes watching the street. The porch light was off, just a glow filtering out from behind a heavy curtain. I waited maybe 30 seconds before the door opened, and that's when the first jolt hit. It wasn't anything dramatic. He didn't run out, wasn't drunk, wasn't yelling. He was just composed, too composed for 1:30 a.m. He was a young man, maybe mid-20s, dressed in an expensive-looking dark suit, but it wasn't the suit that caught my eye. It was his face. It was completely drained of color, pale as old porcelain under the streetlights. His eyes, though, were intensely focused, wide open like he hadn't blinked in hours. They held a kind of profound, unsettling stillness. He slid into the back, shutting the door with a quiet, deliberate thud that seemed too loud in the silent night. He didn't offer a greeting, just leaned forward slightly and said, "Downtown, 444 North Michigan, please. And could you keep the radio off, Arthur?" He used my name. Most riders don't bother looking at the app display. I glanced at the mirror, confirming his stare. It wasn't hostile, just searching. "No problem, son. Always a quiet ride for those who need it," I replied, pulling away from the curb. The engine hummed low. The first few minutes were silence, the heavy, suffocating kind. Every old driver knows this silence. It's either the silence of someone texting furiously, or the silence of someone gearing up to drop a bomb. I was betting on the bomb. My heart rate, despite my years of practice, started that slow, creeping acceleration it gets when you know you're about to be pulled into a story you won't forget. It's the anticipation building up, the first low emotional trigger. Ethan sat ramrod straight, his hands resting on his knees. I could see the slight tremor in his fingers in the reflection. He was holding something back, something big. We passed the shimmering chaos of the magnificent mile, the bright lights casting fleeting shadows inside the car. He didn't look out the window. He was looking at the back of my head, or maybe through it. Then, he broke the silence. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that made the hairs on my arm stand up. "Arthur," he started, pausing to swallow hard. "I need to ask you something." "Go ahead, son," I said gently. "I'm here." He took a slow, deliberate breath, and then he spoke the words that would instantly change the atmosphere in my car from a simple late-night ride to something fateful. "Do you believe in coincidences?" Now, that's not a normal question at 1:35 a.m. People usually ask about the weather, traffic, or if I've had a busy night. This was a philosophical deep dive, laced with an urgency that told me this wasn't an abstract discussion. This was personal. This was the second emotional trigger. Intrigue, mixed with immediate concern. My mind flashed back to a story from 30 years ago about a woman who asked me the exact same question moments before she changed my life with a secret. The memory was sharp, unwelcome. "I believe," I responded, choosing my words carefully, "that the universe has a sense of humor. What most people call coincidence is often just the pattern revealing itself. We just don't always look close enough to see it." Ethan nodded slowly, a small, grim smile touching the corner of his mouth. "The pattern revealing itself. I like that, Arthur. Because tonight, the pattern didn't just reveal itself. It slapped me across the face. He shifted slightly, leaning closer. I could feel the intensity of his confession building, like pressure mounting in a sealed room. I just left a place where I was told something utterly impossible, something that defies chance. And I need to know if you, a man who sees these patterns every night, thinks I'm crazy. Start at the beginning, son, I advised, pulling into the far right lane. I slowed the pace, wanting to give him the space he needed. When a passenger gets to this point, you don't rush the journey. You become the vessel, carrying not just their body, but the weight of their current moment. He began, his voice still quiet, but now laced with a raw edge of vulnerability and confusion. I've spent the last 6 hours at a party, a celebration. My best friend, Michael, got engaged. It was all champagne, laughter, happy tears. Everything felt perfect. The kind of night you file away as a benchmark for good times. Sounds lovely, I murmured, watching the traffic light ahead turn red. A perfect, necessary pause. He scoffed softly. It was, until about an hour ago. We were all sitting around winding down, and Michael's fiancée, Sarah, she decides we should play a silly game. 2 truths and a lie, but slightly different. She called it the uncanny connection. You had to tell a secret fact about yourself, something incredibly specific that you knew no one else in the room could possibly share. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was entirely focused on the sound of his voice. This wasn't just small talk, this was the setup. The foreshadowing was heavy. I felt the third emotional trigger, mounting dread. You just knew the uncanny connection wasn't going to be pleasant. It started light, Ethan continued, his voice tightening. One guy said he once lost his passport in Bhutan. Another girl said her grandmother was a professional chess player. Then it got to me. I decided to tell them about my father. He paused again, a long, agonizing silence. He was fighting the memory. My father died 25 years ago. A tragic random accident. He was driving cross-country, moving to the East Coast for a new job. He was driving a cheap, beat-up 1978 Ford pickup. He pulled over late one night in a deserted stretch of Arizona highway, and while he was checking a tire, he was struck and killed by a drunk driver who just disappeared into the night. It was a cold case for years. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Every old driver feels a shudder when you talk about roadside accidents. It's a fear we live with. The specific, strange fact I told them, Ethan continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, was about the one object they finally recovered from his wreckage months later. His wedding ring was bent almost perfectly in half, and there was a single, tiny, circular scratch near the seam of the brake. The police theorized it was from the impact against the pickup's door handle, maybe. Just that small, specific, heartbreaking detail. He finally stopped, the air thick with the unspoken gravity of his memory. I remained silent, letting the image settle. The bent ring, the tiny circular scratch. Then, he delivered the punchline, the thing that had drained the color from his face, the thing that had sent him fleeing into my car at 1:30 a.m. And Sarah, he breathed out, his voice now ragged, Michael's beautiful, kind, smiling fiancée. She went after me. She said her uncanny connection was her father. She said her father was the man who was driving the 1978 Ford pickup that night in Arizona, and that the police found his wedding ring bent in half, with a tiny, circular scratch. The car, the street, the entire city seemed to momentarily dissolve. My foot instinctively eased off the gas pedal, and the car slowed to a crawl. The sheer impossibility of the situation was a physical barrier in the air between us. Ethan wasn't just talking about a coincidence. He was talking about an exact match of a uniquely tragic and specific detail that linked his deceased father to the father of the woman his best friend was about to marry. The emotional wave hit its first major peak. Shock and emotional paralysis. This wasn't a pattern. This felt like destiny gone violently wrong. She didn't know it was my father's accident, Ethan stammered, his words spilling out now. She just knew the ring detail. She thought it was her father's secret. I saw the look on her face when she realized. It was pure, unfiltered horror. Michael too. They didn't know who the other driver was, Arthur. Until tonight. He leaned back heavily against the seat. So, I ask you again, Arthur, do you believe in coincidences? We were stopped at the light now, right in the heart of the loop, but all the brilliant light of the city felt distant, muted. I kept my foot hovering over the accelerator, knowing the light would change, but reluctant to move. The atmosphere in the car was so thick you could almost chew on it. That kind of revelation, that specific, painful intersection of fates, doesn't just happen, it explodes. Son, I said softly, my voice gravelly with age and empathy. That's not a coincidence. That's a collision. 25 years later, a head-on collision of memory and truth. Ethan's breathing was ragged. I could hear it over the low idle of the engine. He didn't speak immediately. He just stared out the side window, not at the buildings, but at his own reflection, a mirror image of total devastation. Sarah's father, he finally whispered, the name sounding foreign, contaminated. The one who hit him, the one who left him for dead, the one the police never found. That was her dad, and she had no idea the other driver was a father who was moving across the country for his family. She only knew her dad had died that night too, that he was the victim. Now, that was the knife twist. Both fathers died. One was the victim of the crash, and the other, the driver who caused it, also perished, turning the narrative from simple crime into complex, shared tragedy. The air pressure dropped a notch, replaced by a surge of profound pity and confusion. "Wait a minute, son," I interjected, adjusting the rearview mirror to meet his gaze more directly. "Sarah said her father was driving the '78 Ford pickup, your father's truck. But then she revealed a secret about her father too. If your father was the one in the pickup, who was her father?" Ethan shook his head quickly, a desperate, frantic movement. No, Arthur. You misunderstand. The initial story I told them was about my father, the one who was struck, the pedestrian. He was checking his tire on the '78 pickup. It was my father's wedding ring that was recovered from the pavement near the door handle of that truck, the Ford. The connection was made on the detail of the ring and the scratch. He swallowed hard. Sarah's father, her uncanny connection, was that he was the man who was driving the other car, the one who was drunk, the one who hit the pickup and my father, the one who fled. Sarah's uncanny connection was that her father's wedding ring was also found that night, miles away, at a different spot on the highway, bent with a tiny scratch on it. A specific, almost identical detail, linking two different rings, two different men, two different fathers, to one horrific shared accident. The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator, but the speed felt insignificant. The true weight of the situation, the double fatality, the specific mirroring detail on the two separate rings, hit me with the force of a hammer. This wasn't just fate. It felt like a cruel, meticulous mechanism of the universe designed to torture those left behind. This was the moment of existential dread, a major escalation of the emotional trigger. Her father didn't flee, Arthur, Ethan continued, his voice heavy with self-recrimination. He fled for miles, and then, according to Sarah's mother, who finally confessed years later, he stopped his car on the side of the road, overcome with guilt and panic. He called his wife, confessed what he'd done, and then he walked into the Arizona desert. They found his body weeks later. He died by his own hand, consumed by what he'd done. Sarah's story was that her father's ring, the one he wore that night, was found in his car seat, left there before he walked away. So Sarah's father was the drunk driver who killed Ethan's father, but was then immediately destroyed by his own action, committing suicide. And the only link between the two men, discovered 25 years later in a casual party game, was the specific damage to their wedding rings. The rings, I mused aloud, the sound of my voice flat in the sudden silence. Two men, two rings, bent the same way, scratched the same way. It's too specific to be anything but a sign. A sign of what, Arthur? Ethan pleaded, turning to me now, his eyes searching for an answer I couldn't possibly give. A sign that Michael, my best friend since kindergarten, is marrying the daughter of the man who took my father away. A sign that Sarah, the kindest, most generous person I know, is carrying the silent weight of a father who was a killer and a victim of his own conscience. His voice started to break, This was the trigger of intense personal guilt and betrayal. He wasn't just grieving his father anymore. He was agonizing over his relationship with his best friend and his fiancée. When the police found Sarah's father's ring, they didn't connect it to the hit and run because they didn't know he was even involved. Ethan explained rapidly, the words tumbling out like stones. They listed his death as a desert fatality. My father's case remained cold. This little game, this one night, it just solved a murder and destroyed a life. All at once. He pulled a hand through his carefully styled hair, suddenly looking like a frightened boy instead of a man in a crisp suit. I ran, Arthur. I had to. I just told Michael and Sarah I was feeling sick and I left. I couldn't look at them. Because here's the thing that's making me sick right now. The reason I feel like a massive failure of a human being. I slowed the car, navigating a curve. I knew exactly what he was going to say and I braced for it. The moment of truth, the personal stake. I hate her father, Ethan confessed, the words raw and painful. I've carried that anger, that need for justice, for 25 years. It was the driving force in my life, Arthur. And now I know his name. I know the woman he loved. And I know his daughter, Sarah. And she is about to become family, my friend's wife. How can I stand there and watch them marry? How can I look at her, knowing she is the daughter of the man who left my father bleeding on an Arizona road? He stopped, gasping for breath, then continued with a chilling certainty. And if I tell Michael the truth, the whole story about both rings, about the drunk driver, about the suicide, I will destroy their wedding. I will destroy their family before it even begins. I will destroy Michael. He loves her, Arthur, completely. I can't do that to him. But how can I not? He slammed his fist lightly against the seat fabric, a gesture of contained fury and frustration. I feel like I'm betraying my father's memory if I keep silent, but I feel like a monster if I speak. I'm trapped between a 25-year-old need for vengeance and the loyalty I owe my best friend. That's the pattern, Arthur. The pattern of destruction. The car had pulled up to the high-rise building now, 444 North Michigan. We had reached the destination, but the journey inside him was far from over. What do I do, Arthur? You're a quiet man. You've heard hundreds of stories. What do you do when the truth is the most destructive thing in the world? His gaze in the mirror was desperate, imploring. The question hung in the silence. The moment had reached its peak of intense personal anguish. He was looking for absolution or guidance, and I knew I couldn't just drop him off with that kind of burden. I was no longer just his ride. I was his only confidant in this unbelievable, unfolding tragedy. We were parked. The meter had stopped running, but the story had not. I looked at the grand entrance of 444 North Michigan, a beacon of expensive tranquility, and realized that for Ethan, stepping out of my car now would be like stepping off a cliff. He was paralyzed by a terrible moral choice. My role had shifted from driver to reluctant priest, hearing a confession that tied the present to a 25-year-old murder-suicide. I can't tell you what to do, son, I started, my hands resting lightly on the steering wheel. That decision, that weight, it's yours. But I can tell you what I see, and I see two different kinds of pain colliding tonight. I paused, gathering my thoughts. It was vital to anchor him, even slightly, in the reality outside his own spiraling mind. Your father was taken from you. An injustice, a robbery of time and life. Sarah's father, he was consumed by his own guilt. He took his own life because of what he did to yours. He paid his ultimate penance, miles from the scene. The law never got him, but his conscience did. That's a terrible kind of justice, Ethan. It's messy and it's tragic, but it's paid. My words seemed to catch him off guard. He hadn't considered the possibility of Sarah's father being a victim of his own actions, rather than just an escapee. This was the shift, the introduction of ambiguity into his previously black and white world of anger. Paid, he repeated, his voice laced with venom. He left a note, a confession. Did he ever try to contact us? No. He protected his family and left us with a cold case and a hole in our lives. Sarah, she's getting married next month, Arthur. She's happy. How is that penance? How is that justice for my mother, who had to raise me alone? His anger was justified, raw and understandable. This was the moment of denial and justification. He needed the perpetrator to remain a monster, so he could justify his urge to expose the truth. He paid with his life, son. And now, you've discovered the link. That link isn't a sign for you to seek vengeance. Maybe, just maybe, that specific uncanny detail about those two rings is a sign that the two lives, one taken and one spent in remorse, have finally, tragically, been counted and closed. I leaned back slightly, softening my gaze in the mirror. You said she's the kindest, most generous person you know. She is not her father, Ethan. She is not responsible for the sins he committed 25 years before she was a woman. Do you punish her and Michael, who is your brother in all but blood, for a collision that happened before they were planning their wedding? He closed his eyes, a flicker of profound internal struggle crossing his face. I could almost hear the two opposing forces battling inside his head, the ghost of his father demanding justice, and the living love for his best friend Michael. I thought about it, he confessed, opening his eyes. They were wet now, but the tears weren't falling. The emotional trigger shifted to desperate bargaining. He was trying to find a loophole. I thought about telling Michael and Sarah that the ring detail was just an incredible coincidence. I could lie. I could say, wow, what a crazy story. Maybe the same jeweler was clumsy. I could put it away, just forget I heard it, treat it like a nightmare. Can you do that? I challenged gently. Can you live with that truth locked inside you, watching them build their life, knowing that every time you see Sarah, you'll see the daughter of the man who killed your father? Secrets like that, they don't just sit quietly. They turn into poison. He sighed, a deep shuddering sound that spoke of complete exhaustion. That's why I left the party, Arthur. I was terrified of what I might say. I'm a lawyer. I deal with truth and evidence every day. And the evidence here is so circumstantial, so mythic, that no one would ever believe it unless they had heard that conversation. Just two specific facts about two bent rings. He was grasping for a way out. He wanted me, the stranger, to give him permission to ignore it, to tell him the ring detail was just a coincidence. The rings are the evidence, Ethan, but your heart is the judge. Ask yourself this: what would satisfy your father's memory more? Justice in the legal sense, which is now impossible, or peace for the son he left behind? I reached up and switched the dome light on briefly, illuminating his face. It was a calculated risk. I needed him to see my eyes, the sincerity of an old man who has seen too much tragedy to believe in simple revenge. He was trembling. If you tell Michael, you destroy his happiness, I stated plainly. If you stay silent, you risk destroying your own soul with the burden of the secret. But there's a third path, isn't there? The sudden idea, the realization that there might be an alternative to the binary choice, provided a momentary spike of hope and release. What third path? He asked urgently, leaning forward until his knuckles brushed the driver's seat. The path of mercy, I supplied. The path of choice. You have the power here, son. Sarah doesn't. Michael doesn't. You can choose to use this incredible, unbelievable knowledge not as a weapon, but as a period mark. The story is closed. Your father and hers are gone. You can choose to forgive the dead man who cannot ask for forgiveness. You can choose to allow the living to find their happiness, despite the past's intrusion. I looked at him until I saw a single tear finally escape the dam and track a shining path down his cheek. He was letting go of the anger. Just a fraction. I don't know if I can forgive him, Arthur, he choked out. I don't know how to let go of 25 years of hate. It's who I am. Then don't forgive the man, Ethan. Forgive yourself for carrying the hate for so long. And choose Michael, I urged, the emotional focus now shifting to compassion and moral imperative. Choose the living friendship over the dead resentment. That's the kind of sacrifice that defines a man. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't heavy with dread. It was pregnant with possibility. He was seeing the choice clearly now, personal pain versus the destruction of others. The cost of silence was high, but the cost of speaking was higher. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet, opening it to a photograph. It was a faded picture of a young man with a wide, kind smile, holding a tiny boy, Ethan, on his shoulders. My dad, he said simply. He stared at the picture for a long moment, then slowly tucked it away. "Thank you, Arthur," he said, his voice stronger now, though still fragile. I needed to hear that. I needed to know that the answer to, "Do you believe in coincidences?" wasn't just yes or no, but that the answer determines what kind of man I am going to be. He opened the door, but paused before getting out. He looked back at me, a genuine, if haunted, smile on his face. I think I'll be quiet. For now, for Michael." Ethan finally closed the car door, and I watched his tall, suited figure disappear into the high-rise lobby. The ride was over, the fare collected, but the story was still heavy in the air. I sat there for a minute, the engine off, listening to the gentle hiss of the city cooling down. I'd given him advice rooted in mercy, a path of sacrifice. But I knew, just as surely as the sun would rise, that the path of silence, when the secret is that vast and that dark, is no easy road. As I told him, secrets turn into poison. I drove away slowly, the image of his tear-stained face and the 2 damaged wedding rings stuck in my mind's loop. I didn't get another ping for a while, so I pulled over to a quiet side street and just reflected. I've heard plenty of confessions, affairs, scams, career failures, but seldom one that hinged on such a profound, almost mythological intersection of fate and tragedy. The following day, I couldn't shake it. I was back out driving in the afternoon, running errands for folks, trying to push Ethan's dilemma out of my mind. But every time a young man in a suit got in the back seat, or every time someone mentioned an upcoming wedding, the memory rushed back. The weight of someone else's secret can be surprisingly heavy, even for an old driver like me. My own intuition, honed by decades of watching people's hidden currents, was screaming at me. Ethan's choice of silence was temporary. The pressure of the impending wedding, just a few weeks away, he'd said, would act as a massive vice, squeezing the truth out of him. The psychological tension was palpable, even for the bystander. That evening, around 6 p.m., the app pinged again. A ride from a coffee shop in Wicker Park to an upscale restaurant downtown. I accepted the ride and drove toward the pickup location. The name on the profile was Sarah. My blood ran cold. The sheer improbability of it. Picking up Sarah, Michael's fiancée, the daughter of the man who killed Ethan's father, within 24 hours of hearing the confession, was staggering. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the universe actively interfering, cranking up the emotional pressure to an unbearable level. This was the trigger of forced proximity and high anxiety. I pulled up to the curb. She was standing outside, dressed in a lovely pale blue dress, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. She was radiant, exactly as Ethan had described, kind, beautiful, and utterly oblivious to the sword hanging over her head. She got in the back seat, her movements light and graceful. "Hi, thanks for the quick pickup, Arthur," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. She had also used my name, looking at the app. She had the kind of easy, open smile that suggested no dark corners in her life. "A pleasure, ma'am," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt like a spy, a double agent, who knew a devastating secret about the person sitting 3 feet behind him. The internal conflict was immediate and fierce. She sighed happily. "It's been a crazy day. Just picking up some last-minute floral samples before the florist closes. The wedding is coming up so fast." "A happy time, I'm sure," I managed, pulling into traffic. "The happiest," she confirmed, "though last night was a little rough. Our friend Ethan, he had to leave the engagement party early. Said he was sick. He was acting really strange, though. Quiet, tense." She paused, and I braced myself. The emotional trigger of paranoia was spiking. Was she testing me? Did Ethan say something I didn't know about? "He's usually the life of the party," Sarah continued, oblivious to my turmoil. "He's Michael's best man. They're like brothers. He seemed almost haunted after we played that silly game, the uncanny connection. Did you ever play that, Arthur?" "I'm afraid my game-playing days are well behind me, ma'am," I replied, keeping my eyes fixed firmly on the road ahead. The temptation to ask a leading question, to see if she had figured out the connection, was nearly overwhelming. I fought it down. I had no right to breach Ethan's confidence. or to shatter her world with an investigation. "Well, you should be grateful you missed it," she said with a slight nervous laugh. "It got weird. I shared a story about my dad's wedding ring. He passed away years ago, a tragedy. And Ethan, he shared a story about his dad's ring, who also passed away years ago. And the details, they were eerily similar. Both rings found bent, both with a tiny, specific scratch. It was such a profound, bizarre coincidence, Arthur. It felt like a premonition." Ethan just froze up. She was still calling it a coincidence. She had only made the connection between the stories, not between the fathers. She hadn't realized that the two stories were two halves of the same terrible narrative. Ethan's silence for now was holding, but then she lowered her voice, a sudden note of deep concern replacing her light tone. "But Arthur, I'm really worried. I called Ethan this morning and he didn't answer. Michael tried too. He hasn't returned any texts. He took the day off work, and his building concierge said he hasn't been seen since he returned last night. He just vanished." Panic and escalation hit me hard. Ethan wasn't just struggling with the secret. He had apparently gone into hiding. My advice about choosing mercy might have failed. The poison was working faster than I thought. "He didn't seem well when he left the party, Arthur," Sarah insisted, her voice now trembling slightly. "I saw the look in his eyes. It was like he had seen a ghost. Michael is frantic. We just need to know he's okay. He's the most private person I know. But this silence is scaring us." She was looking to me, the anonymous driver who had seen Ethan last, for some scrap of reassurance. The irony was a cruel lash. I knew exactly why he had disappeared. He was trying to escape the terrible choice, the emotional reckoning. But by disappearing, he was only confirming their worst fears. "Sometimes, ma'am," I said, choosing my words with absolute care, "when life drops something heavy on a man, he needs time to put it down. He needs silence to find his balance again. I suspect he'll reach out soon. He just needs a moment." She seemed to take a measure of comfort from that, sighing deeply. "I hope so. I just can't imagine what would cause him to shut down like this. He was fine 1 minute, and then..." She trailed off, shaking her head. We arrived at the restaurant. I pulled over to the valet stand. "Well, thank you, Arthur. You've been very kind. I appreciate the talk," she said, collecting her flowers. As she reached for the door handle, she turned back, and in the mirror, her eyes were sad and searching. "You know, when my dad died, he left behind so many questions. I never knew the full story. I just wish I could talk to someone who understood that kind of grief," she whispered. I gave her a small, tight nod. "Some stories, ma'am, are best left to rest. Time is the only thing that answers the questions." She paid, thanked me again, and stepped out. As I watched her walk away, my conviction solidified. Ethan's silence was hurting the people he was trying to protect. He had internalized the secret, and it was tearing him apart, making him vanish. The emotional trigger now was one of futility and deep concern. My advice, rooted in mercy, had led to this. I was responsible in a small way for his disappearance. I needed to find him. When Sarah's car pulled away, I didn't immediately start driving again. I sat there, the weight of the story settling on my shoulders like a misplaced coat. I had dismissed her father's fate as a consequence of his own actions, a terrible form of penance. But Ethan's reaction, his panic, his sudden alarming disappearance, told me I hadn't fully grasped the poison of that secret. I had advised him to be silent for the sake of mercy, but silence was now isolating him, possibly pushing him toward his own tragic end. The emotional trigger here was deep responsibility. I felt an urgency, a compulsion to intervene. I am an old driver. I see people for 10 minutes and then they vanish. But sometimes a story sticks to you like sap and you can't just wipe it off. Ethan's fate, intertwined with those two bent rings, felt like a debt I owed, not just to him, but to the memory of all the lost souls who have confided in my back seat. I knew one thing: I had to find him. I drove back to 444 North Michigan, the downtown high-rise where I had dropped him off the night before. I knew he was a private person, so he wouldn't be checking into a hotel or going to a friend's house. He would retreat somewhere familiar, somewhere he felt safe to grapple with the overwhelming truth. I parked across the street and just watched the building. I ran the scenarios in my mind. Where would a man, devastated by a decades-old truth and afraid of his own anger, go to hide? The apartment? Too vulnerable. Work? Too exposed. Then I remembered a crucial detail from our conversation in the car. He said he was a lawyer. Lawyers, especially those under pressure, often retreat to the archives, the one place they feel control over facts and darkness, and I remembered the photograph he showed me, a faded picture of his father. My memory, though older, is still sharp from tracking routes and faces. I pulled out my phone and did something I almost never do. I looked up his full name, Ethan R. Caldwell. It wasn't hard to find the high-profile law firm he worked for, which specialized in complex civil litigation. They had a large office complex near the river. I drove to the building, a monolithic glass structure, and pulled into a parking garage around 9 p.m. The lobby was deserted, but I saw a faint light on the 30th floor. I took the service elevator up, banking on the fact that an old guy in a driver's cap wouldn't raise alarms. When I got out, the floor was silent, lit only by emergency lights and the ghostly glow filtering from a single office door. I walked toward the light. The office belonged to E. Caldwell, partner. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently. Ethan was sitting at a massive mahogany desk, his back to the door. The sight hit me with a sharp jolt of fear and relief. Relief that he was alive. Fear at the sight of his condition. The expensive suit was rumpled. The tie was loose, and the immaculate desk was strewn with old documents and files. He wasn't working on a case. He was conducting an autopsy on his own past. "Ethan," I said, my voice low. He didn't startle. He just turned his head slowly, recognizing the voice instantly. His eyes, already wide last night, now looked completely vacant, red-rimmed from lack of sleep and weeping. He looked like a man who hadn't moved for 12 hours. "Arthur," he whispered, a sound of exhausted surprise. "How did you find me?" "You left me with a debt, son. A story that needed an ending," I replied, walking into the room and gently closing the door. "Sarah, Michael's fiancée, she told me you vanished. She's worried. Michael is frantic. Your silence is hurting the people you're trying to protect." The emotional trigger here was guilt and shame. The realization that his attempt at silent sacrifice was causing distress to Michael and Sarah hit him hard. He gestured weakly toward the pile of papers on his desk. "I've been going through my father's old files, cases I never looked at before, trying to find some kind of clue, some sign that the ring story wasn't true, that it was all a lie." He picked up a yellowed piece of paper. "This is the last note my father ever wrote to my mother, about the new job, about moving us east. He was so excited, and it was all taken away by a drunken mistake on a lonely road." His voice was cracking, barely holding itself together. "I tried to be quiet, Arthur. I really did. I sat here all night telling myself, choose Michael, choose mercy. But every time I thought of his name, I saw the face of the man who hit my father. I saw the connection. It felt like a ticking bomb, and I can't stop looking at the wire I'm supposed to cut." He slammed his hand down on the desk again, the sound muffled by papers. "But the worst part, Arthur, the part that is killing me, I found something else. Something I had completely forgotten about, something that makes the whole coincidence even more impossible." He leaned forward, his eyes burning with a feverish intensity. This was the rising climax of the emotional narrative, the final, unbearable revelation. When I was 8, a few months after my father died, Michael and I were playing in his garage. His father, Sarah's father, was alive then. He was fixing something. Michael and I were digging in a toolbox, and I found something shiny, a piece of metal. It was a broken keyring, bent and twisted. I remember asking Michael's dad what it was, and he just yanked it out of my hand, shouted at me, and threw it into a back corner of the garage. I was terrified. He never yelled. He looked sick. Ethan's voice dropped to a horrifying whisper. I didn't think about it again until tonight. "Arthur, I think that broken keyring, that twisted piece of metal, was the thing that caused the scratch on my father's wedding ring. The impact bent the ring, and that small specific piece of metal caused the only unique mark. And it was found in Michael's garage, held by Sarah's father. The coincidence wasn't just the rings. It was that Michael's father had a specific piece of evidence, a literal piece of the accident that he was hiding, a physical link to the crime. The reality of the situation expanded into something cosmic and inescapable. The original story was one of tragic, fated coincidence. The new story of a specific object linked to the accident being briefly found by Ethan in the home of the killer felt like the universe laughing maniacally. The sheer, overwhelming horror of the truth, the absolute horror of destiny, crashed down. He didn't just kill my father, Arthur. He actively held onto a piece of the crime scene. Ethan hissed, the tears finally starting to flow freely. He couldn't let go of the guilt, but he couldn't face the music. He hid it, and I touched it. As a boy, I touched the thing that murdered my father. He buried his face in his hands, completely broken. I can't keep the secret, Arthur. I can't. Every day I look at Sarah, I'll see the man who hid the truth. I have to tell Michael. I have to. Even if it destroys everything. Ethan's office, high above the silent, dark city, felt like a pressure cooker. The air was heavy with the weight of 25 years of unanswered questions. The knowledge of the broken keyring, the physical piece of the accident that Sarah's father had kept, transformed the tragedy. It wasn't just fate. It was the active, conscious act of concealing evidence driven by the sheer inability to cope with an unbearable guilt. Son, listen to me, I commanded, my voice firm, cutting through his despair. I walked closer to the desk, placing my hands on the solid wood, grounding myself. You found the proof. You found the final horrible piece that connects the men, and you think the only way to honor your father now is to use that proof as a bomb, to obliterate the life of the woman you care for and the man who is your brother. The emotional trigger here was firm confrontation and accountability. I needed him to see the cost of his intended action with brutal clarity. It's not a bomb, Arthur, it's the truth, Ethan yelled, his voice echoing slightly in the vast office. I can't let Michael marry her without knowing. This isn't just a random tragedy anymore. This is a deliberate, conscious concealment. My father deserves justice. And what does Michael deserve? I retorted, meeting his desperate gaze. He deserves the chance to be happy. He deserves a choice. But if you give him this truth now, a few weeks before his wedding, you're not giving him a choice. You're giving him a mandate for destruction. You're giving him a decision that will poison every moment of his future, forcing him to choose between the woman he loves and the man he calls brother. I took a deep breath. This was the moment for the ultimate paradox, the final plea for a different kind of justice. Your father's killer is dead, Ethan. He didn't escape. He suffered a kind of private hell, carrying that broken key ring, that physical fragment of your father's death, around in his life until he couldn't take it anymore and walked into the desert. He paid the price that justice demands, his own life, and a life lived in torment. That key ring wasn't evidence. It was his burden, his silent confession, and he left it behind as a final testament to his guilt. I softened my voice, shifting the emotional focus to redefinition of justice and catharsis. You've spent 25 years searching for justice. You found it tonight, not in a courtroom, but in the deepest, darkest corner of a dead man's soul. And now, you hold the ultimate power, the power to choose what to do with that truth. I leaned in, meeting his eyes across the desk. The coincidence wasn't the rings, Ethan. The coincidence was that the universe chose you, his son, the one man who had the moral right to revenge, to be the keeper of this final secret. The universe didn't make you the executioner, son. It made you the executor of mercy. He stared at me, his chest heaving, the raw emotion of the past day finally starting to exhaust itself. He was at the point of breaking, but also at the point of choice. If you tell Michael, I continued, my voice firm but quiet, you trade your hatred for his. You pass the curse on. You ensure that the memory of your father is eternally linked to the destruction of Michael's marriage. But if you keep silent, if you choose the living happiness of your friend over the dead resentment you've carried, that silence is no longer a betrayal of your father. It becomes the ultimate act of respect. It becomes the act that says, the payment has been made. The story is closed. My life starts now, beyond the hate. Your father wouldn't want his death to define your life, or to destroy your best friends. I watched him as the fight slowly bled out of him. The fierce, desperate intensity in his eyes dimmed, replaced by profound, bone-deep weariness. He slowly picked up the papers, the death note, the files he had dragged out, and began to put them away, not out of fear, but out of acceptance. "I was so focused on the evidence of the crime, Arthur," he said, his voice barely audible. "I never saw the evidence of the punishment." He pushed back from the desk, finally rising. He looked at me, an old man in a cab driver's uniform who had followed him into the darkness and brought him back. "I won't tell them," he confirmed, the decision final, weighted with sorrow and courage. "I'll choose Michael. I'll choose Sarah. I'll choose to let my father rest in peace and let her father rest in his shame. The truth is too destructive to be used as a weapon." He walked over to a small cabinet, pulled out a large, sealed manila envelope, and wrote a single word on it: personal. He placed the keyring file, the death note copy, and all the relevant documents inside. "I'll keep the truth, but I'll bury it deep, Arthur, and I'll start living for the future, not for a cold case." He looked completely drained, but there was a flicker of something new in his eyes: peace and resolution. The coincidence wasn't the beginning of a hunt for revenge. It was the final, terrible opportunity for forgiveness. I nodded slowly, satisfied. "That's the kind of man your father would be proud of, Ethan." He walked me to the elevator, and as the doors opened, he stopped me. "You saw the beginning, Arthur, and you showed me the end. Thank you for everything. Be well, son," I said, "and go home, get some rest. The sun is coming up, and you have a wedding to attend." As the elevator descended, I knew I would never see Ethan again, but his story, the terrible truth of the 2 bent rings and the broken key ring, would ride with me forever. Some stories start with a simple ride, but they end with a monumental, quiet choice. Do you believe in coincidences? No. I believe the universe has a pattern, and sometimes my job is simply to drive the souls who are brave enough to finally see it.